Matt, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah,
So,
thanks for having me.
first question, what was your goal by the end of someone's time? What's your goal that they've gone through at Next One Up?
I think by the time they get to, whatever we see as kind of their finish line is really going to be, the best skill set for life that a young person could access. Not perfection, but the understanding that, can the student think independently? Can they operate in the world independently, both socially, academically, economically, figuring out how to take care of themselves. So there's a lot of pieces to it, but we do look at graduates in our program. For example, a young man that might be in his late 20s that is has a stable career, is maybe looking at buying a home. There's not a specific pathway, but it really is about generational changes. Are you doing, or are you even more stable or thriving even more than where you came from? And that's the same for me or you or anyone. Is are you constantly improving? And so we look at this generational change conversation. So it changes, but with every guy, is what does stable look like? We always ask ourselves that question.
So, I guess I could have started that way, but for someone that doesn't know what Next One Up is, just give it your 30 seconds. What it is, what you guys are doing there at Next One Up.
Uh, Next Up's a long-term mentor model, mentor program, and our model begins in seventh grade, where a young man joins our program and commits every Sunday throughout his school year and 5 weeks every summer until he graduates from high school. So it's 400 plus hours a year, 6 years of commitment, and then throughout their college years, we support them financially and also in terms of their career ambitions. And then Next One Up kind of closes, or the door closes behind them when they reach full employment, whether right after high school or after college, and they essentially then become alumni, and those alumni become engaged in our program as mentors, donors, board members. So we've sort of created this vision of a full circle where a young man will leave and come back as a great leader to our program.
So are you saying no to any leaders? Are you looking for something in a mentor coming back through the program?
Yeah, there definitely are guys that just, sort of quote, aren't there yet, in terms of being mentors back to the program. And sometimes it goes back to that stability. We have guys that are in their early 20s that still struggle holding down a job, and but we still continue to support them. So there absolutely are, and we have a call with those guys tonight, a group of about 20 of our alumni that are eager and active with our young guys in the program. They get it and they want to be mentors. So it's really not a lot of labor and intensive work, in that they get it. They know when they've eclipsed a certain point in their career that they're ready to help.
So yeah, and I mean, you guys have crazy success, especially in the Baltimore area, of kids graduation and just going on to college, right?
Yeah, and the big goal is to get guys outside of Baltimore. We say kind of outside the Beltway, and that we want our guys to experience the rest of the world too. So, internships in New York. We had a guy in Boston this summer, and maybe Denver actually next summer. California, we have an opportunity for a kid next summer as well. So it really is building them within, within the walls of their city, which in a lot of ways is that way. They don't see a lot of the world outside of Baltimore. So starting with successful stories there, and then branching out and getting them out there to see what else is outside Baltimore.
So when and why did you start Next One Up?
I wanted to answer. I wanted to help be the answer to a problem. I always say that, whether it's, someone at our staff or a young person, anybody that's going to take on an initiative that absolutely matters to them, they have to figure out what problem they're solving. For me, was what does a young person do after school and in the summertime? As a young 20-something teacher, that was a basic question that I wanted an answer to, is how are you going to keep yourself occupied, motivated, and accelerating? And so that was the quick answer I wanted to solve with Next One Up. And developing it down the road, I realized, like, it's not just about creating a pathway, but it's about walking with a young person on that pathway, knowing especially what Baltimore can do to the trajectory of a young person. All these roadblocks, all these analogies you can throw out there that slow somebody down or stop them completely in their tracks. So I think now we realize that Next One Up really is a vehicle for absolute transformation. So the idea is, if you come in seventh grade and you stick with us, your career, your college life, your life after sports and everything has the opportunity to be very stable and even better than you could have imagined if you put the work in. So it's a little bit of a, it's not much of a charity. It's a really good opportunity.
Yeah. So what have you seen as, I guess, some of the challenges going starting in and kind of up till now?
I think the first, 5 to 7 years, we've been around now 11 years. The first 5, 6, 7 years were really about understanding how to build a business all while managing, I guess for this conversation or others, you could say kind of your clients or customers, because the people that you want to, really keep happy and, enjoying what you're giving them, whether it's someone selling t-shirts or someone doing a mentor program, you want to keep people coming back because they like what they're walking away with. And I think as the program started to grow, we realized, hey, this model is working. Just that business development. How are you going to bring in the revenue that you need to carry out the vision that you have? And that's the challenge of any business. And I think, basic, staff growth, losing people, hiring people, you hire the wrong people. I've learned so many lessons along the way, and most importantly, hiring the right people. We have a great staff now, and it took me a while to get there. So, all through these past 11 years, I don't think we would be where we are now if we didn't have all these experiences from the past, years where you're not sure if you're going to have enough money to do what you want, or to even pay yourself. I definitely had some tough days and tough years where, like any startup business, I didn't know if it was going to fly. I knew that my purpose and passion were not going to change, but it sucks sometimes. You have to fund that passion. Not always. I could meet everybody at a basketball court, every day for free, and that's what I was doing for about 4 years or so. But I realized in order for this model to truly grow, that it needed some financial resources. So that's made me a better leader and a better business person in general. But I'd convey that to anybody that wants to start a business or a mentor program or a nonprofit is work for somebody else before you start your own, or because the climb is real. There's no easy pathways. So, and I did that by teaching. I volunteered at Big Brother and a lot of other nonprofits just to see how they operated and see what I liked about them, and take a little bit from everything I saw.
So what, you obviously have kids coming from some very tough scenarios. What's the struggle? Is there a struggle of having them buy in? Is there something that you try to push to get them to buy in?
Yeah, it's a good question. It is. We've had new members, like after a week, they commit, they go through a really tough round of interviews, and we really just check the level of their commitment and their accountability. And then we'll have a guy that starts, it's like a college coach that recruits a great player out of high school. Then he shows up and he's not as good as you thought he was. And we get that a lot. And then we think, all right, well, let's just, we got to motivate this guy and figure out how we can get him to that place. So, there's certainly a lot of work that needs to be done when a kid joins, but it's, I think as a kid jumps in the door of Next One Up, and take me back again, Connor, because of course I just lost myself. Your question was with the
So
young guys, getting them to commit.
yeah, getting them to commit buy
Yeah.
in the program.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, during that interview process, we push it hard. I mean, it's real questions like, hey, if we operate every Sunday at 9 a.m., will you be there at 8:55? And so, of course, the kid says yes. And then we start, and it's 9:10 on his first day, and he's not there yet. So a lot of it is the conditioning that's going to take to get a kid up to our speed and our expectations. But the other is, very simply, when you're looking at a seventh grader, we have really nice clothes in terms of like Under Armour gear and sweatshirts, sweatpants. We do a lot of marketing on social media, not to entice a kid just based, you're going to look good in the program, but we do try to take care of our guys. We treat them like a team. Just like anyone that joins a team, you want that team jacket, or you want that sweatshirt. You want to do all these great field trips and college experiences. And so we do a lot of that. I think we keep a really healthy balance of having a lot of fun and exposure. Our guys have had chances to meet some pretty high level professional athletes and people in all different industries. So we do entice them. There's all kinds of carrots that we use for sure. And the other is our alumni, having them come back and say, look, my life is successful partly due to what these folks did for me. But a lot of it obviously due to their work ethic. So there's just a lot of good info that they can share. So it is tough. The first year or two of the program, dealing with 7th and 8th graders and trying to really get any middle schooler to believe in a longer cause than just their own, day to day is pretty difficult. So we dangle a lot of things in front of them, and we take away a lot of things. And sometimes it's scholarship money. Sometimes it's, a senior trip that we'll pull. We don't even work at a school. We're an independent nonprofit. We roam around and check on our guys. We've even pulled guys from football games and said, hey, you're not playing tonight. So I think what kids are signing up for that they've come and families realize, and most of them really love and appreciate, is that we bring a bit of oversight. So some of these guys, they get a lot of discipline from us, and others show up and work hard. All they get, I say, hey, if you love Next One Up, it's free pizza and sweatshirts. If you hate it, it means you got to come every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. It really depends on the optics and how you look at it.
Yeah. So going back a little bit, you played college lacrosse, high level at Hopkins. What was qualities that you found motivating in coaches, or the coaches that really impacted you?
I think it's attention to detail, Connor. That was a big part of my college coach's approach. It was tough. It was a lot of yelling and, being on time, and on time's late, being early is on time. All those things, like, I could just repeat over and over in my head, but some of them become a bit much at times. And I started to realize that the attention to detail is something that I'll always get out of sports, as you know, and others, right? A foul shot is off by an inch, or a batter swings at a pitch and he misses by half an inch. Is different between a foul ball and a home run. So I really do, and I tell our guys and use that quote a lot of for all of these guys, it's how you do anything's how you do everything. It's whether you're making your bed or you're taking out the garbage versus working out for a team. We have a couple guys in our program that think they're high level Division I athletes, but they don't work like them. So they're going to find out the hard way. But it really is. There's a lot of labor that goes into it.
Yeah. So what kind of through your career or just life growing up, what steps like prepared you to do next one up?
I think for me I was lucky. I went to sort of a middle of the road public school system in central New York, where when I say middle of the road, I was sort of exposed to just everyday people like myself, and that I didn't have access, and I would have, didn't have access to, a big time sports school or a private school or a Jesuit or Catholic school or all these, great opportunities in central New York. You went to the school, the town you grew up in, and that's what I had, and I'm proud of it. But we didn't have a lot of success in sports. There was not a whole lot of Rhodes Scholars going through my high school. I wasn't one of them either. But I was lucky that I had a dad as a coach. He was a college athlete. So there was certainly a lot of modeling at home, where my father was a college athletic director. And so I was just sort of buried in, I was a coach's kid. So I was really lucky in that sense. There was not a lot of other stimuli that, some folks might say, well, I went to a really high level high school, or I, played for a state champion football team. I didn't really have any of those stories. Mine was just, here's where you live and where you're growing up. It's a great place. It's tough, and figure it out. And I think figure it out is one of the quotes I often use too with our guys. We used to have it on a wristband. It was just figure it out. Guys were like, well, I missed practice. I missed the bus. Well, figure it out. That's your problem. And, so for a lot of guys that have excuses in life, and I think that's what my upbringing with my parents was like, central New York in the middle of winter and it's snowing. I have basketball practice and the gym is a couple miles away. And my dad would say, figure it out, put your boots on. So I think the kids in next one up benefit from a lot of that. They get a lot of that attitude.
So would you say that that was really the effect of your style of coaching, or was it like, so I guess who or what really affected that style of coaching? Your dad? And
yeah, my dad, and I think it's you. I don't think I'm unique, but it's unique in terms of my my upbringing. My grandfather was a small town but pretty well known high school football coach in central Pennsylvania. He's in the he passed away in the 80s. He's in the Pennsylvania Football Hall of Fame, and had a really great career at a small school. He was never a big time guy, but he was a high school PE teacher, and real humble man. And raised my father, was his high school football coach. And then here comes my father, who, I grew up and he's my coach at a lot of camps and everything else. So I just kind of come from a coaching tree. And with that, I'm the only one, I got into high school coaching, but then I got into this sort of nonprofit mentor space of, college and athletics. So I do feel like I'm doing exactly what my family tree would have dictated, but I'm doing it my way, and I'm doing it without a whistle. And my father's biggest warning to me when I graduated college in 2001, he just said, I got into coaching. A lot of young people are. He's like, be wary of coaching because it's changing. It's turning into, as you could see in football, even lacrosse is, 365 days of year of watching camps and clinics. It's really changed. And he comes from a different era. So that's one reason college coaching and high level, with my kids, I really wanted to be able to make, to an extent, make my own schedule. I didn't want to be locked to a team or a field every single day. And that's what I like about the diversity of my work. I could be a coach for, in any given day, 4 or 5 different college students or high school student athletes will call me and help them troubleshoot problems. Some of it is, I don't have any money right now. And others might be, I need an internship. So I think in a lot of ways I'm coaching just like my dad and my grandfather, but I'm doing it in a way that I set out for myself, that I carved out.
Okay. And when you're working with, I don't know, resistant or unmotivated athletes, whether next one up or during your time coaching lacrosse, what did you have a strategy? How'd you handle or approach that?
Yeah, we do, and we continually do. And to be honest, some of our guys that consider themselves to be the best athletes in our program are typically the hardest to motivate because they feel that they have the skill set. So obviously we really enjoy working with an underdog type kid who's, always willing to put in the work. And actually just, it makes me think, if we have a young man that plays football at Trinity, he's one of those guys. Like, he just wants to outwork everybody around him and really prove that he earns everything he has. And then we have another young man who's a senior in high school right now, who's got a college scholarship offer, and we can't get him to join any Zoom calls. Ever since he's gotten the interest, he basically said, I don't need you guys anymore. So it really is like managing egos and athletes, and motivation is really difficult. And I do think, I'm not a big whiner, but I do think we're in this phase of social media now where it's hard to compete. If I call, and this is it happens too often, unfortunately, I might call a kid and say, hey, I talked to your coach today and he's not happy with your attendance in the study hall. He's not happy with your performance in practice. But literally the kid might say, look, my highlight reel just got 3,000 likes on Instagram, so I don't believe you. And so that's what I actually have to deal with, is the internet's telling, the social media world is telling a kid that he's fantastic, but the coaches behind the scenes that see him walk to practice and not run, that see him half-ass it through a drill instead of show everybody how it's done, that doesn't show up on Twitter. And the problem that I run into is that I have to often deliver the truth to a lot of young guys. So there's a lot of 17, 18, 19-year-olds in Baltimore City that don't like me very much. And I will say there's a lot of 24 and 25-year-olds that like me now, and they didn't like me then. A lot of it is just, again, the truth of attitude, body language, the way that you act on social media. If I see something, I say it. And I do it in a really thoughtful manner, as a coach would, as a way to encourage and not to break him down. But we always deal with issues of motivation, and especially when you're dealing with young people that might come from a background where there might not be a lot of motivation at home.
So kind of going through next one up, early days, I'm sure there are some tough times. So what did you do to really keep yourself motivated and inspired to keep doing that work?
Yeah, good question. I definitely had some moments in some years where I wasn't sure if it was going to work in terms of, creating a real, sort of career and organization out of it. So, honestly, I always had I as I say to folks at work, I always plan things a month in advance and a couple weeks in advance, and then 5 years in advance. Everything that happens in between is just is a byproduct of hard work. So like, I really knew that I wanted to grow our staff for a college counselor, a social worker, to really meet all the needs that I felt these guys were showing. And so in that sense, I just kept my eye kind of on that North Star of like, what's going to get us there. It's hiring great people. If you hire great people, you're going to attract even, better investors, and better investors will equal better outcomes. So in some ways the recipe has been working, but yeah, in the early years, it was really difficult to make it through a few years. And there was a couple of years where I worked 2 jobs at once, and I had kids, and I started to realize, as I tell any young person, as much as I wanted to quit one of those jobs to focus on just earning the income to support my daycare bills, looking back on it now, I'm really proud and happy that I didn't think about that. I thought about it, but I would have never considered stopping doing Next One Up. So with all that, it's something I think I'll always look back on and be proud. So anytime someone works through a difficult time in the life cycle of a early startup, again, if you can answer the question, what problem am I solving, it'll keep you motivated. I knew that I was solving problems, and not publicly, and I wasn't an ego thing as much as like, I knew that Joe Smith needed to get to college for this reason. I'm going to get him there.
Yeah, awesome. So kind of like we were talking about before started recording, whether it's a book you would suggest to coaches, any evidence, research that's really influenced the way you coach, the way you've run Next One Up as a program, any of that, love to hear.
Yeah, there's a lot of old and new, books along the way that I felt were important. But I would say if I was to look at like kind of right what's on my desk right now at my office or my bookshelf and podcasts and so on, um, you know, uh, Ryan Holiday's written some good ones. I really like the idea of the historical stability of the Stoics. So when you look at Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and take a look at the ancient Greeks and that philosophy, Stoicism and just the understanding of uh, basing a lot of your ethics on logic. What makes the most sense? So Ryan Holiday wrote a book, Ego is the Enemy, and he also wrote one called The Obstacle is the Way. And both of those are rooted in Greek philosophy and Stoicism. That's meant a lot to me. It's a good read. If you ever have a hard time finding, just, sort of a why me, sort of as we all do kind of during this time, I also probably once a year read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. That book is pretty high level in terms of intensity, and it also will help you find that purpose if you're struggling. So that's a big one. And then I have a couple quirky ones along the way that mean something to me, but it's Tim Ferriss wrote I like the multi-genre ones where you can just read about all different people in one book. So Tools of Titans is a great one, and Tribe of Mentors, he wrote both of those, and I keep those on my desk, and they're awesome. If you ever just want to read about a business leader that created a solution to a problem, I really like how Tim Ferriss put that book together. And then culturally too, and a lot of different, like every American should, but like Autobiography of Malcolm X is just a great read for me. And then from the coaching standpoint too, there was one other that I was going to mention as well. Oh, I'm sorry, from the work that I do. So any coach that might be working with inner city kids and understanding, obviously the demographics can change. I work primarily with African American youth, and for me, as I mentioned before, there's two Baltimore-based books: The Long Shadow, which helps you really understand the idea of home, street, and school. The idea of what impacts a kid in his house, what impacts a kid on a street, and then what kind of education is he being provided, and that impact. And then Not in My Neighborhood is another book that talks more about real estate, racism in real estate, redlining, and things. Why people live where they live, and it uses Baltimore as the example. So that's probably 4 or 5 or 6 books that I read that I really like. And then podcasts. I like to be really diverse in terms of I get my nerd podcast from of course now I'm struggling here. I'll send it to you, Connor. I'm drawing a blank. Oh, sorry, Radiolab. Radiolab is awesome, and that's all just types of really cool science topics and things. When I get caught into like coaching and sports and athletes, I forget like, hey, I want to listen to science and astronomy and how the world works. So Radiolab's a really good one. I like Joe Rogan. It's pretty centralist in my opinion. I like all the various guests, and it's entertaining and so on. So finding some podcasts too for me. Rich Roll's been a decent one. Kevin Hart's got a great one. Mike Tyson. There's so much content out there now, and I love all of these figures. So there's nobody perfect, but it sounds so crazy today. Is like if I want to hear what's going on in the world of Republicans, I'll listen to something on the right. If I want to hear what's going on the left, and then I can at least formulate what my view of the world is. But I definitely don't have any I'm not hiding out in any corners politically or socially. I like hearing a little bit of everything, but it really is, I want good news more than bad.
Yeah, and final question: what do you miss the most about coaching lacrosse? Consistently coaching.
Oh man, I miss the consistency of it. I literally, Connor, miss 3 o'clock grabbing my whistle and changing into a pair of sweatpants and sweatshirt, blowing the whistle and saying, in the next hour and 45 minutes, we're going to get better. And I think when I talk about what I do for work and all of that, is I have this 30-year plan of, taking a whole culture of young people and making it better. And so with lacrosse, there was always kind of a beginning and end. The season begins, here's our goal. To me, looking back, it was very simple. Work your butt off, be a great teammate, be a leader, and let's see how it comes out at the end. So I missed some ways the simplicity of coaching lacrosse, but I will say I'll probably be back. Awesome. I miss it enough.
All right, well, I'm going to stop the recording right there. All right, I first wanted to introduce Drew Davis here. He is the player development coach at UCLA and also a part of the University of Denver coaching master's program. And Drew, I want to thank you for coming on.
No problem, my pleasure.
So kind of in what you're doing right now, with what is your school's really, what's your top priority in developing your athletes at your school?
Kind of our top priority in developing our athletes when it comes to a strength and conditioning side is making sure we put the proper amount of weight that they can probably handle on their frame. So including weight, body fat, things of that nature to make sure that, they're in the right kind of area we want them in for their position group and kind of for how we see them moving forward. But just being able to fill out their frame, to be as agile, quick, moving as they can possibly can to be the best at their position for what we're doing for both our offense and our defense.
Okay. And would you say that what the program is trying to do aligns with your priorities as a coach? If you were to make some changes, what would you be thinking about?
I definitely think when I think about it, there's nothing I would possibly change. Just as far as us caring about the athletes, making sure that they're, we use, excuse me, we use the catapults to kind of judge, what their daily load is on, how far they're running, who's in the red, who looks like they're most likely to sustain the injury because their load is too high, or they were in the game and they ran a lot of plays and we didn't take care of them during the week. Dang, I haven't sneezed all day. I'm just sneezing now. Excuse me. So we do a lot of things the right way, and that's why I like our strength and conditioning staff, and we make sure that we kind of relay that to the players as well. We're not just talking about stuff upstairs between coaches and weightlifting staff and nutritionists. They know where they need to be weight wise. They know their position coach knows. If they feel heavy, they should let us know. If they feel like they can put on some more weight and still move the same, they should let us know. So it's all encompassing and making sure that they know, like, hey, this is where we see that you fit at. This is where other people in your position are on this team. And, in the NFL, we use a lot of NFL numbers as well. So we just use an all encompassing effect. And there's probably nothing I would do differently. Those guys are doing a great job of what they do.
So kind of like considering that the vast majority of college athletes don't go pro, how do you see college athletics benefiting the individual as a whole? So what are guys really getting out of it, I guess?
I think guys are really getting, a college experience and also a degree in education. I think that it's up to them to take advantage of a lot of things that are around them. Sometimes we're really focused on, and I know from experience that when you're playing college football, you're going to the NFL, and that's it. And nobody can tell you any differently, and that's fine. Knowing that they're probably 1 or 2% from, each team or each school that possibly go. We had, what was it, 3 guys drafted last year that came out, which is pretty good. But when you look at the Alabamas who have, 10, 15, 20 players coming out. So they just have to do a great job, and that's part of my job as far as making sure they take advantage of the resources around them so that, if going to the NFL doesn't happen, that they've taken time to take in everything around them, to network, to use being a student athlete at UCLA while you're there and not after the fact after you leave. So a lot of the onus is on them to take care of the resources that are put in front of them to go tackle. And that also includes, hey, you're getting your scholarship paid for if you're a student athlete that received a full scholarship. And that entails, nobody just says you have to get 1 degree. You can go ahead and you can major in 2 things. You can major and minor in something. And it's all about your approach to it. So the opportunities are there. So it's just us to kind of pull that potential out of them and have that want to from them.
Okay. So, and speaking as a former college athlete, and a current coach in college athletics, do you believe that we're doing an adequate job in helping support these athletes, or is there a little bit of work we could do there? Whatever your thought is on that.
I think there's always more work to do, but I also know it depends on the school. Sometimes it just depends on who your head coach is and what his priorities are and what your administration's priorities are as far as for the student athletes. I know there isn't a director of player development at every school. I know that there isn't. So considering that's my whole job, that's all I have to focus on. We're able to do a lot more things rather than somebody who's just doing it because it got put on their plate and they're just trying to, make it through the year. So I think it can always be better. And like I said, it's a lot up to the players to make sure that they take advantage of it, because I can do all the programming I want to. If you don't go to any of it, it doesn't do any good to you as well. So there can always be a better job being done, whether that's internships, getting people networking with companies and businesses that they feel like they want to go into. And because those guys represent the school when they get done and when they graduate. So you want that to be a good reflection of what you guys have done as a program as well.
Okay. So really, I guess what influenced your decision to go into the coaching side of sports? What pushed you that way?
I just always had some great coaches and some great mentors around me who've done a great job in taking and taking a liking into me and my work ethic and what I do. And so I know how important it is to have somebody that you can relate to have somebody outside of your own home who you can give a call to, who you can count on, and who really kind of takes an interest in what you have going on, even outside of football. So I've just been blessed to have a lot of great people around me. And I feel like it's my obligation to kind of carry that on and kind of help instill that in other people as well.
That's awesome. So what kind of actually, I had a follow-up question for that. So what were some qualities that you saw in your favorite coaches and role models that I know, or like, I guess kind of helped with that and made you want to be a coach one day, however you see that?
When you think about coaching, and it's starting to change a little bit, the old school way of coaching was a whole bunch of yelling, a lot of cursing, and stuff like that to motivate you. A lot of the coaches I've had, they can yell at sometimes, but a lot of the time it's just being able to talk to you, being able to relate to you, being able for them to show you, a little bit of them outside of coaching, like they'll crack jokes, they'll talk about their time playing, like things that didn't used to be too prevalent as far as, the coach used to be your coach and I'm your coach and we don't need to have any relationship outside of that, to them being more, I still call a lot of them, I don't call my football coach, but I call them my coach in general. And, that's a coach in life, somebody that helps you day to day. But they were just being able to be around and being able to be a sounding board for me when I was, choosing between colleges, when I had coaches coming in and, when my parents weren't home to meet with them, that we set up a dinner at their house and we sat down and we talked football and talked about scholarships and stuff like that. So, just having another support system, to kind of go off of that, which is just, it gave me a glimpse into, and they were younger too. So it gave me a glimpse into what it's like to have somebody, especially me, being an African-American male, to have another relatively young African-American male who has a wife, who has kids, who has a family, and what did I want that to look like for myself. So it was just another example for me, outside of my parents on, what a great relationship looks like, what a young professional looks like, and how you can help young men.
Awesome. So, how do you see your program building character and leadership skills in your student athletes?
I think we're very good at it. When we came in here 3 years ago, there was a lot of things that were wrong with the program. To no need to point fingers or place blame. That's just how things are. Usually when a coach and staff leaves or gets fired, it's not because they didn't do anything great. It's because they had some small lapses in a couple different places. But we're doing a better job, and it starts with recruiting. You have to bring in good guys with great character, and then they can build off of that. But sometimes you get caught in college looking at, who's the most athletic, who has the most stars, what's going to look the best on paper. And you don't do your due diligence in going in and asking the hard questions to their high school coaches, to their families, to their principals, to their teachers. What are some problems you see with this player? What does this player need to work on? How are they as a student? Are they coachable? Do they listen in the classroom? Where do they sit at in the classroom? So getting a lot more of those good character young men, and then also setting the foundation of the values when people come into your program as well. What's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Are we on time to class, or is being late allowed? Is not going to class acceptable? Is being late to lifting acceptable? And so a lot of that sets the foundation to let people know what you stand for as a program. And to be able to, as hard as it is, to be able to let some people go when they aren't living up to that standard as well, because it shows other people, wow, if I don't want to do it this way, then there's no other way to do it. So that helps a lot, instead of just sweeping stuff under the rug and saying, depending on how good the player is, okay, you missed a workout, don't do it again, but then you punish another guy who might not be as good. So keeping that overall consistency throughout the whole program, no matter how good the player is, and being able to stick to those morals and hanging your hat on something.
So is there any in recruiting, is there, I don't know, specific attributes that point to that stronger character to find out, or is that a little bit, is that, I don't know, take a lot of digging?
I mean, it takes as much digging as you want to do. I would compare it to when you're, courting a girl or, looking for a girlfriend. You know what red flags pop up with you. If you ask your friends about her and they might not have anything good to say, that might be, a reflection of her as far as their interaction or anything like that. But it just depends on who you ask. It's kind of hard when you have their high school coach who wants to make sure that they get to a Division I because it looks better for him and his program. But you have to go with what you see with your own eyes too. If you're giving them a call and they never call you back or they don't get back to you, like that's something that should let you know, okay, either they're too busy to get back to me or they don't want to talk to me. And if that's somebody, if they're going to do that when you're recruiting them, then what would they do if they're on your team as well? So it just depends on the realm of it. But for the most part, when you go to different people, like I said, their high school coach, their teacher, their principal, when you talk to their parents and see what they think of them as well and where they need to work on, those are very key influences and very key factors in letting you know what type of individual you have and if they fit your mold of your people you're trying to recruit.
Okay, so kind of changing gears a little bit, a little more towards the master's program. Do you have like a set coaching pedagogy that you believe in that I don't know that you've read about, something along those lines? Any kind of I guess what I'm asking is, can you think of some resource that was extremely powerful to you to this is what coaches have to, or they have to read about this, something along those lines.
Off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I can't remember precisely as far as in that class.
Mhm.
But I just know we're in a time where, it just can't be all you giving. You have to take some things. You have to take some things back from the athletes as far as how they like to be coached. What worked for them, what didn't work. So as you're trying to mold them and make them better as a player, you also have to let them mold and make you better as a coach. And so being receptive to criticism, I guess you can say, on both sides. But just having someone, you could have a coach who's an expert in what they do, but are they lifelong learners as well? Do they have a growth mindset to be a better coach yet tomorrow than they were today? And I think that's very important when you're dealing with the younger generation of kids who, we all get to that era where we're like, oh, back when I was this and this used to happen and we didn't used to do this. You have to kind of get that feel for them. You got to not try to fit in too hard, but you got to kind of mold yourself to kind of get in better with them.
Yeah, we're kind of going through that right now. I think my first thought with that is I think you're seeing specialization at such a young age, and sometimes it just seems so unnecessary. Like in Colorado, for example, there's probably no guys that are going to be like extremely elite hockey players that play in any of the high school programs or any of the clubs. They go somewhere else, they do this, and it's crazy. But you got to learn from it and be able to adapt there. So in the program so far, do you have any material, any class that's really stood out to you that you feel has, I don't know, has helped you a lot with your coaching?
Oh, it's funny. I'll just grab my class sheet right now. But I want to say I've been through what I've been doing, one, two, three, five classes right now. I'll probably say the most interesting, and I wouldn't even say it's helped me on the sports side, but just organization and administration of sport. You just learn overall, what the AD is going through, what the DFO is going through with scheduling stuff. You figure how many moving parts there are, and if you're thinking of in the shoes of an athletic director, you're always thinking about the program and kind of how does this reflect on the program, and you have to have the athletes or the players in mind as well. So, if you ever wanted to get up to that point, how it's just not, okay, let's go out and play this game. There's a lot of questions that need to be asked. There are a lot of T's to be crossed and I's to be dotted. And, sometimes as a coach, you can lose track of that. Like, just like we talked about before we got on here, where you're like, okay, yeah, football got approved. You're ready to go. And, and for the athletic director, there's a million things they need to think of going through COVID and setting up road trips and what happens if we do have some players that contracted? You know, how are we going to talk about that to the media? What's the policy for that? So just figuring out, you know, and then you even going more into that, talking about GMs of professional teams and stuff like that, GMs and owners and things like that. We all know it's a business, even at this level, but kind of just how you navigate that, you know, to always look out for the student athletes, the players, the coaches, and that brand that you're sporting on your shirt all the time.
So final couple questions. Any literature, any videos, just anyone that stands out to you from that you believe has kind of helped build your coaching philosophy that you'd be able to recommend?
I definitely say Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy's a African American who was African American, his first African American to win a Super Bowl with the Colts when he had Peyton Manning. But just his philosophy on his approach to sports and to coaching, still to be family oriented. He's not a yeller. I don't think he cusses. He's very faith based. And you know, he had a long road to where he got to, and once he got there, he didn't change how he was before that, if that makes sense. You know, there are some people who they go about things one way, and then you get a head coach job, and whether you feel or somebody tells you you need to coach this way, you can't do X, Y, Z anymore. But I feel like, you know, I think, and I think also just Pete Carroll, but just going into Pete Carroll for a little bit, he coached in the NFL. He did it the way somebody else told him to do it, and he didn't last too long and got fired. Then he went to USC and did it the way he wanted them to do it, and they had a lot of success with it, and he's been coaching that way ever since, and now he's back in the NFL with the Seattle Seahawks. Does it always work out like that? No, but at the end of the day, you want to say that you coach the way that you wanted to coach, I think is the main moral of it. Will it be effective? Will it not? We don't know. But if you go through all the right avenues and have the right mentors that teach you things and tell you what to do, I think the style of your coaching, I think it'll be effective if you have confidence in it, and instead of you trying to be someone you're not, to be the coach that you want to be, I think is very important.
So, final question. So from your time like in college and then kind of going in the NFL and being a coach now, and we're seeing all these changes, and the NCAA coming up with different rules with players are they going to get paid? The next step seems to be likeness, being able to go off your likeness. Do you think that that's the NCAA taking enough of a step, or as the athlete back then, do you feel like that wouldn't have been enough?
As an athlete back then, I think back then I would have been satisfied. And I think now that I wouldn't say they're satisfied now, but that's a step in the right direction for them. And knowing that it didn't come from the NCAA, but they're kind of like, okay, you know, I think I relate back to when there was a problem when the players were complaining that they didn't have enough money to eat or something like that. And so instead of the NCAA saying, okay, here's some more money for food, they're like, okay, we'll give you unlimited meal points for you guys to have meals on campus whenever you want to. So they're always going to find a way to kind of scratch that itch a little bit, but not scratch it the whole lot. Mm-hmm. I still think that there's a lot of room to go. I think they will get paid one day. And the argument there is to try to figure out, okay, does this person at UCLA get paid the same as somebody who's at Fort Valley State, or does this person at Stanford get paid the same as this D2 athlete or D1 AA athlete? But I think now, as far as, you know, the climate we're in, athletes have a voice. They know they have a voice. They're on all the social media platforms. They have followers. So they have a lot more influence and kind of can be heard rather than just by when the newspaper wants to come and talk to them. So now is as good a time as any for them to push for a lot of stuff they want. But it's going to take them to come together collectively, like it usually happens with teams or organizations that want something, and to be able to hold out if they're not getting what they want, to the point where it hits people where they don't like to be hit, and that's in the pocket. So we all know every company likes to get their money, and when you start messing with that bottom line of what you make, that's when, okay, well, what do you guys want? How can we make this happen? What do we need to bring awareness to? And so I think that's a big thing for them, is to not be satisfied until they kind of get what they want. And that might, who knows how long that'll take. But you know, it might not happen in their generation, but is it something that they'll continue to fight for also when it's time for them to leave as well?
Yeah, no, I think that popped in my head when you're talking about it. The first example that I can really, the guy that I really remember saying it was Shabazz Napier
Yes,
with
yes.
UConn. He was like, dude, I'm starving. I don't have any food, and it's crazy. But you know, like you said, hopefully we're seeing some positive steps and letting these, you know, don't let them get taken advantage of. Let them, they have power. So I want to thank you for joining me, taking your time. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Connor. Appreciate you.
Hi, this is my next guest, Chris. He is the strength and conditioning coach at Ken Denver, Strength and Performance. Chris, I wanted to first ask you, what do you believe is the most important aspect of developing athletes?
I think that the importance of sustainable habits are probably the most important aspect. And when I say sustainable habits, it's finding a balance of what Ben Bergeron talks about. How do I eat, sleep, train, think, and connect? And really specifically for high school athletes, how do I eat and how do I train? And building habits that are sustainable. Because if you're an athlete that needs to be surrounded by other people in the gym, or you have to be by yourself, or you can start some sort of diet, but it really isn't sustainable and manageable. I think those are the common pitfalls. So I would say, and again, if I were to sum it up in 2 words, I would say sustainable habits, and expand that a little bit. Sustainable habits in terms of how you eat and how you train. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So everyone talks about in athletics these days that we're seeing changes in athletes. So what do you really think is important in coaching the modern day athlete?
I think, well, the first thing I would say is I think the biggest challenge in coaching the modern day athlete is the pull outside of school. And what I mean by that is whether you're a sport coach, if I'm a volleyball or lacrosse or a basketball coach, it's the pull to those clubs. You know, and likewise as a sports performance coach, it's the pull to an outside trainer. And I think that there's nothing wrong with either club sport or outside trainers. They're not good or bad, better or worse. But I do think that when and I'm dating myself here a little bit, but when I grew up, you trained with your team. When you went in the weight room, you went in the weight room with your team. When you ran sprints with your team. And I think that there is value in that. It's what I like to call sweat equity. When Connor, when you and I go to the weight room together, I see you working hard and you see me working hard. And there's a bond that happens there that you may be working just as hard when you're working with a personal trainer, but I don't see that. And I think that sort of shared hardship, I think that goes a long way. And when an athlete feels like he or she can get a better experience or is more likely to get a college scholarship by, you know, going to an outside trainer or participating in club sports, I think that has an effect on the high school sport experience. I don't know if I really answered your question there or not.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, even I graduated high school in 2012. I think that the participation rate through all these clubs and everything is drastically different. You know, it's the main form of recruiting for college lacrosse was through high school athletics, and now that's becoming more and more the minority.
Right.
So when you have a beginner in the weight room, what are you really focusing on? What's your goal for that beginner athlete?
Yeah, a great question. And I'll tell you, I follow a very simple hierarchy. It's not my own, I stole it. But the first thing is mechanics. The first thing is always mechanics. And I think that, you know, whether we call mechanics proper technique or proper form or whatever, biomechanics is the use of the body in ways that are appropriate and safe and sound. And without, you know, I have never once told an athlete at any level, put more weight on the bar or get a heavier kettlebell or get a heavier, you know, whatever. Because an athlete will intuitively know when they're ready to do that. The first thing is mechanics, and mechanics is when I can coach that athlete and put him or her in the right position and have them demonstrate the right movement pattern. Second is consistency. When can that athlete consistently demonstrate those mechanics with minimal supervision and with an awareness? And lastly, and this is at the athlete's appropriate level, is intensity. Adding weight, adding speed, trying to put more force into the ground. But that intensity can never come before sound, consistent mechanics. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Where's that philosophy from?
I stole that from CrossFit. That's CrossFit's. At one of their coaching fundamentals is consistency, mechanics, then intensity. One other thing that, like, sort of, not to go too much detail, but both Olympic weightlifting and gymnastics surprisingly follow a very, very similar pattern. And the first step is what we call position in weightlifting, or shape in gymnastics, understanding how to hold a static position or a static shape in gymnastics. Second is controlled movement through a range of motion. So for example, if the static position is holding a barbell at the ground with a neutral spine, then a controlled movement is a deadlift, simply picking that barbell up. The third progression from static movement is to dynamic movement, where I go from a static position, holding the barbell on the ground, a controlled movement which is a deadlift. Third sequence would be an explosive variation of that movement, which is a clean. And then finally, that fourth step, again, in either gymnastics or weightlifting, is a series or sequences, where I go through a series of shapes, patterns, movements dynamically, shifting in shapes, shifting in patterns. So a full clean and jerk, a muscle up on the bar, on the rings, or something like that. That's probably more information than you needed.
Oh no, that's perfect. So I know you have a little bit of into the nutrition background. So if I'm an athlete at Ken Denver and I'm looking to create a meal plan for whatever my goal is, gaining muscle, do you guys have different resources to help that athlete out?
What I would say, yeah, and just so you know, like my background, my bachelor's, I have a BA, but my master's program right now is a master's in human performance. So that includes a lot of different things, including courses on nutrition. So what I would say, again, generically speaking, is this: number one, not knowing if the athlete has dietary preferences or restrictions or anything like that. What I would say is you're never wrong to eat whole natural foods. You're never wrong to eat whole natural foods. I do think that, generally speaking, we tend to probably not get enough high quality protein in our diets, and we probably get too much refined sugar and starch. Whole natural foods are meat, vegetables, fruits, nuts and seeds, some starch, and no sugar. So if you have no dietary restrictions, consume large quantities of whole natural beef, chicken, eggs, whatever your protein source is. But I believe that if the protein source doesn't come from an animal, then it's of considerably lower quality. If you're a vegan or vegetarian, you're going to need to make sure that you're getting enough protein in your diet. But again, whole natural foods includes the full array of fruits and vegetables. The more processed the food gets, the more its nutrient quality is degraded. So generally speaking, again, I would say eat whole natural foods, probably consume more protein, even if you're not trying to gain weight. More protein is, I feel like personally, helps the recovery process, and stay away from refined sugars and starches. Is that sort of in the realm of what you're looking for?
Totally. And so kind of going back to the strength and performance side, if you were in charge of Ken Denver right now, their next facilities, weight room, you have no budget, what would be your goals of what you're trying to build in the gym?
Okay. Do you mind if I actually take a step back to talk about the previous one? And this, I think, is super important. A lot of athletes will ask, what supplements should I take? And I think that's a super important question to address. And here's my approach to it. Number one, before we talk about supplements, you have to get your diet in order consistently. And here's what I mean by that is you need 10 days to 2 weeks of consistently eating well. That is consuming high quality protein, consuming adequate amounts of it, consuming enough vegetables and fruits, nuts and seeds, minimal starch, no sugar. You have to do that for 10 days to 2 weeks before I'm willing to really talk about supplementation. And the reason I say that is this: supplements should supplement a diet. Supplements should supplement a diet. And if you're eating a healthy diet, really, it doesn't require supplementation. Supplements are really for like that last little 5% of getting this highly competitive athlete that slight edge. And if you're leaning on supplements to create your diet, I think there's no foundation there. That being said, if an athlete comes to me and says, okay, coach, I have eaten, a high quality diet for the last 2 weeks and my parents are on board with this and they want to know what supplements I should take. Here's my approach to it. Number one, consuming adequate protein. I think whey protein is something for a high school athlete and his or her parents to discuss. I think the research behind it is pretty solid. Whey protein. Second, and probably a relatively distant second, is creatine. There's vast amount of research that's been done on creatine. If an athlete, particularly a young male athlete, is consuming enough red meat, they're probably getting a good amount of creatine in their diet. But if they really feel like they need to, they're already eating healthy and they've demonstrated the capacity to have those good habits, then I would say talk to your parents about creatine supplements. Creatine's, again, tremendous amount of research over the last 3 years, generally pretty safe. And then the third, and again, probably less so for high school, probably more so for at least college or post-college athletes, as I say, look at caffeine as a supplement. There's no substitute for high quality sleep. So caffeine should never be used as I didn't get enough sleep last night, I'm going to go into the gym, I'm going to, triple scoop my pre-workout and that's going to get me through it. There's no there's no substitute for high quality sleep, just like there's no substitute for high quality diet. Okay. Does that make sense before I answer the next question?
I actually think I should have had a question like that. That makes a lot of sense.
In terms of the ideal facility, there's really two aspects to how I would design that facility. One, the first is what works. What do I think works? But a question of equal importance is, what does my throughput look like? In other words, if I'm training groups of 5 to 10 students, I probably, one, that's a very small group, but two, like that means that I can use more equipment, or I can use more diverse equipment. Ideally, a team comes in with 20 to 25 athletes, okay, which is that's what we want. But that also means that, like, if I have one, it's a bad example, but if I have one lat pull machine, I can't use that one lat pull machine for 25 athletes, right? So better for me to have a long pull-up rig, a long bar that I can, use bands or add weights to, for students to do pull-ups. So the ideal weight room consists of high quality barbells, high quality bumper plates, some dumbbells, some kettlebells, a rig, for lack of a better term, where athletes can do pull-ups, where they can attach bands, where they can do a wide variety of things. Because those, and I would also want an area where they can do plyometrics, do sprinting. Those are the simplest items. One facility, I can get 85 to 95% of the results I want with that. And I can get the throughput with the number of athletes that's optimal. I could add a lot of other items, but as soon as I do that, I'm going to start limiting the throughput capacity. If I've only got, would I love to have glute ham developers and reverse hypers? I would. But realistically, I'm probably only going to have space for like 2 or 3 of those things, which means I'm going to limit the number of athletes that can use them. I don't know if that's a good enough answer.
No, that's okay. It makes a lot of sense, especially in the team setting. Like, I would understand if you're, one-on-one lessons, how that would be a different answer. Like, right. I don't think a lot of people think of that in that same way. So in your during your time in grad school, what's really helped you from that, like that you've taken from grad school, and it's helped with your coaching?
Boy, I'm a big believer in the program. I've learned a lot. I should say I've seen a lot. I do think that when a large part of coaching is seeing cues, seeing movements, seeing patterns, watching other coaches. I would say there. I mean, boy, the biggest thing here's I would say the best answer. I think the best thing that I've gotten out of my graduate program is really looking into research and really looking into, and there are some articles that are good, and there's a lot of websites and a lot of pages that I enjoy reading and following. Oh, I like that movement, or I like that cue, or I like the way this coach did that. But that's very different from hard research. And I think that, for me, being able to look at really what research has done and who has done it, because not all research is done with an unbiased tilt. So I think that for me, learning how to look at a hard research article off Google Scholar and really be able to understand some of it, I think that's been super helpful for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a ton of sense. Kind of going back to training a little bit, since you do have at Kent a fair amount of athletes who are, they're specialized and already, how are you really training to avoid overuse injuries? Is there a certain technique? Anything you have there?
Yeah, great question. I would say a couple things. One, you're right. There are some athletes who really focus on a sport, but because Kent is a smaller school, we probably have more multi-sport athletes than a bigger school. At a 5A school, you're going to have kids who just play football. You're going to have kids who just play volleyball. They're in the club sport year round, and there's some of that at Kent. But I think that there are more multi-sport athletes at Kent just because of its size than some other schools. So how do we address that? One, I don't think there's such a thing as a football program or a basketball program or a volleyball program. I definitely don't like the idea of sport specific training. What I mean is this: if I have a baseball player, and I think this is not uncommon in some outside facilities. If you're a baseball player and you throw the ball 100 to 150 times a day, and then you go into your training facility and you do medicine ball drills that sort of replicate that, I think I personally do think that you're sort of inviting that overuse injury. So combining those two concepts, we have a lot of multi-sport athletes. There's no sport specific programs. Now, when we have our volleyball players come in, they will squat, they will deadlift, they will do some basic Olympic derivative movements, because those are universal movements. Squatting and deadlifting and pressing and pulling off the floor, those are universal movements. So just because we're used to seeing football players squat and clean doesn't make those movements specific to the sport of football. Creating, increasing force production is what any athlete probably wants. Can I put more force into the ground? Can I run faster? Can I jump higher? Can I make contact with more force? So I think that it's important to differentiate between, it would not be uncommon maybe 10 years ago to have a volleyball coach say, why are my girls doing cleans? That's what the football players do. Well, those are fundamental movement patterns. It seems like there was something else I was going to say there, but I'll hold there unless you.
No, that makes a lot of sense there. Kind of one of my final questions. I don't know how you want it phrased here, but like in your philosophy or research, or just trying to find anything for your strength and performance, do you have any philosophers, books, anything, podcasts even, that you would recommend for someone wanting to get into the field to look into that have helped build where you are?
Yeah, Yeah, I do. Let me take a half step back to that previous question because I thought of what I wanted to say. Now there are certain sports, and this is like how do we tailor a training program for a sport, and in the along the lines of preventing overuse, we also want to address injuries that are prevalent in sport. For example, in a lot of volleyball, we see knee injuries as a result of the knee sort of diving into what we call valgus, which may be a result of weak hips. So we on the side of the hip. So there will be movements that we use for certain sports, not to enhance those sport performances, but to mitigate the use or mitigate the likelihood of injuries that we typically see. So if there is a sport, again, let's say basketball or volleyball, where the athletes have their arms up overhead for extended periods of time, and it tends to create a little bit of instability in the shoulders, we may do more more movements to strengthen the shoulders and mitigate that. So I think it's important to differentiate between sport-specific training, where we're trying to replicate some sport and movement and make it better, as opposed to looking at the sport that the athlete is participating in, and how do we mitigate likely injuries. So before I answer the next question, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of how what would I recommend in terms of resources for somebody who wants to get into strength and conditioning? I think that there are a couple organizations that I think provide really sound fundamentals of mechanics. Probably my personal favorite is less well known, and that is an organization called Strong First. And Strong First teaches barbell, kettlebell, and body weight movements, and they are very focused in the movements that they coach. So their barbell certifications, they last 3 full days, and they cover a very, very limited number of movements in great detail. And the thought being that if I teach you how to back squat effectively, you can probably take that back squat and turn it into a front squat or a Zercher squat or a goblet squat or anything like that. So I think Strong First really teaches great mechanics and fundamentals of movement, without really geeking out too much. Secondly, I think that CrossFit, and I'm not a CrossFitter. I don't do CrossFit. I don't do the high skill movements, the Olympic lifts, or the high skill gymnastics. But I think that CrossFit has a very sound philosophy. Are there CrossFit coaches out there who are not great coaches? Of course there are. There are people who have their CSCS, which is a certification, the CSCS, and they may still not be a good coach. I think that a couple things are super important. One, understanding mechanics. I think when you understand mechanics and knowing that, we always have a lot to learn, that's the most important thing. Secondly, I would say find a good coach. And a good coach is not one with, 127,000 Instagram followers. A good coach is one who understands mechanics, can provide the right cues, relates to athletes, whatever their sport or activity. So does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. And Connor, if you need to shut me off because I'm talking too long, it's not going to hurt my feelings. There are a couple other coaches who've been around a long time. I think that Dan John, first name Dan, last name John, he's an older coach. He's a thrower. He's been in the game a long, long time. And I think one of my favorite non-sciencey books is Dan John, Never Let Go. I think that he talks about a lot of stuff in there, and it's a fun read. It's a good read. Dan is a great human being. He's a good guy, and he's a really, really articulate and well thought coach who's just been doing it long. So I don't want to say so long, but he's been doing it long enough that he really comes across, and he knows how to address questions and topics intelligently without. He's not going to throw around a bunch of sciencey terms just to show you how much he knows. I would say, and again, I think that I mentioned him at the beginning. Ben Bergeron he's a CrossFit coach. He coaches at CrossFit New England. And Ben, I would say the thing I like about Ben is that one of the things I don't know if I would say I stole from Ben, but Ben is a coach who talks about how does an athlete eat, sleep, train, think, and connect. So instead of just, what does your squat program look like? I'm going to do 3 sets of 5 and then 5 sets of 3 and then, whatever. Ben addresses an athlete holistically. And I think that is an important, I like the term sports performance coach, because I think as coaches, if we just get kids in the weight room, like anybody can get somebody in the weight room and make them bigger, faster, stronger, right? That's sort of the, that's how we used to think about, that's what a strength and conditioning coach does. But a sports performance coach should address the athlete's mindset, should address the athlete's nutrition, should address the athlete's sleep patterns, and how that athlete connects with other players, with other coaches, with their parents, with their teachers. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that's, I think that's all I have for you. So I'm going to stop the recording there. Richard, I wanted to take a moment to thank you for joining me. This is Richard Judd. He is the Assistant Athletic Director at Kent Denver, deals a lot with of the high school. Is that the term?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you've been at Kent for a long time now, and yes. I'm sure you you have parts of your philosophy that you've developed from Kent. So what really is your philosophy for an athletic department that you personally have?
I think an athletic department should be one that is, the key word is supportive. Supportive of coaches and doing everything you can to make their jobs easy and so that they can be the best coaches they can be, and supportive of the students, whether that's at a high school level or at a college level, to get the full experience that they desire and deserve, and supportive of the school that you're at, and whatever philosophies that school has, whatever principles those schools have, you have to support those while supporting the other parts to create the best possible athletic department you can.
And what would you kind of say that's fitting of your coaching philosophy as well, or like what really is important?
Like a little bit. My coaching philosophy, there's parts of that's in there. I don't necessarily know if I have a philosophy, more as my job as a coach isn't necessarily to win. Obviously, I want to win as many games as I can. I think everybody wants to win, but mine is to create an environment where the girls currently and the boys in the past can enjoy themselves, can learn the game, and to play the best that they possibly can play on any given day in practice or night in a game. Really is my job. If they're walking away saying I had a great time, then I did my job, no matter what the record says.
Awesome. So then when it comes to coaching, like what are you really looking for in your athletes? Like what's your goal, where you can sit down at the end of the season and say, you know what, I've done my job? What are you really looking for in your athletes?
Certainly, our motto is we need to be better at the end of each day than we are at the beginning of each day. And that goes games, practices, whatever, win or lose. We want to make sure we're better. And when I feel like I failed is when I walk out and feel like we didn't get better that day. And that goes season long too, typically basketball, not necessarily this year, but typically basketball is a long season, runs from November to possibly mid-March. And if you're playing your best basketball in December, then you're probably not doing your job. Obviously those games are just as important as the games in February and March, but you certainly want to be playing your best at that time. And so our goal every day is to be better. And our goal is to build and keep building until we get to the playoffs, which obviously is the ultimate goal. If you can get in the playoffs, I always say if I can make the state tournament, then I've got as good a chance as anybody else in the tournament and just give me that chance. I think I'm a good enough coach, and my coaching staff's good enough to win games in the tournament.
So I think just having been a part of the department for a few years and knowing different students that have gone through Kent Denver, I think
Yep.
one thing that's evident is that the passion that the department puts in there into the student athletes and the coaches and all that. So really, what do you think is important to create this atmosphere that coaches want to stay so long? All that. What have you seen to be this key?
Well, I think, I mean, part of that is that we have great kids to work with, and that shouldn't be, um, shouldn't be put on the back burner per se. I think, it starts with that. But I also think if you're passionate about your job, whatever that is, and especially working as an athletic director, and you're passionate about their wins and losses and their individual team successes, then the coaches will be that way and the players will be that way. There's always been that motto that bad stuff flows downhill. I think good stuff flows downhill too. If you're excited to go to a game, you're excited to cheer them on. You make them feel like they're the most important person on the face of the earth, whether you believe that or not, or whether you know a thing about their sport or not. You got to make them feel that way. And I feel like over the last 19 years or so, we've done a great job. Our coaches, we have great coaches, and they come in with a great attitude. They know their sport. They love coaching their sport. They love working with high school students. And I think what we do is just provide a passion for Kent Denver athletics. And that success kind of rolls down from there.
Okay, so if you were to run Kent Denver's athletic department without any financial restrictions, what would you add? What would really be some goals of yours there?
Without financial restrictions?
Yeah.
What about city restrictions?
We'll add that in there too.
I would say two things. We have great facilities. There's no doubt about it. We need new locker rooms. It's just the locker rooms at our school are outdated, and they just don't need a remodel. We need new ones. We need separate ones for high school and middle school students. It's not a good environment for that. Although they're, the time they spend in there together, a sixth grader and a 12th grader or whatever, is minimal, if nothing. There still is that possibility that can happen, and that's just not right. Mm-hmm. It would be great if we, if I didn't have money or location, we'd build a pool, we'd build an ice rink. We probably need about 4 or 5 more tennis courts. I think the toughest part for athletic departments in high schools, besides general finances and some of the other regulations that go on in the world, is when you have to rely on outside facilities for your program. You build great relationships with those places that we rent pools and rinks and courts from, but as we're seeing this year, we're kind of at their mercy of whether they A, will let us on there, or B, charge us more than we usually have to pay. So everything I would do financially would be facilities so that we could certainly get away from relying on outside entities to be able to make our program thrive. I think we have, we always have the ability to get new uniforms and new basketballs and new equipment such as that, but I really, facility-wise, it'd be nice to have everything on campus.
So a two-part question here, kind of from your time in various levels of education, what did you feel like you coming into this job that you didn't learn that you wish you had learned? And then what do you feel that you were prepared well with coming into working world?
I was prepared to be able to work with kids. That was always a given. I always knew how to do that. It kind of was something that I was good at, and you know, had some strong backing on that one. What I wish I knew, I wish I knew financial stuff, budget stuff a little bit better when I came in. I've kind of learned it over time, just by making better relationships and reading and keeping my eyes open for things. But I do think that if you can budget, if you know budgeting and finances a little bit, that helps you in conversations with the business people on your campus, or in your district. That I think that that plays a huge role in it.
Yeah, and I mean, like I feel like just coming into it now, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know we pay for this, and that. So I guess that can be kind of a learning situation, even if you feel slightly comfortable with some of that stuff.
Yeah, the finances is it's a bigger part than I think I realized when I started this job.
So another bit of a two-part question. In your years at Kent Denver, what has changed in regard to how teams are developed and coached? And that's also the second part of that question is, I feel like there's a big focus on the psychology or wellness, for lack of a better word, of the athlete. So how have you seen those changes at Kent, and is there anything that you've seen that you wish was focused on more?
Yeah, well, certainly the biggest change, non mental but more physical that I've seen is the concentration more kids have in playing one sport. They may play multiple sports, but when I first started at Kent, we had several multi-sport athletes, if not 3-sport athletes. And some of our best athletes played 3 sports and always had time to play 3 sports. Now it just seems that the pressure of our students to focus on a sport in order to help them get into college, and the bill of goods they're being sold by club teams, has really forced them to make some choices that hurt sports, like basketball at Kent Denver, which isn't the most popular, just fine. But I, certainly been hurt by those girls that play field hockey and lacrosse mainly, but soccer as well, and feel like they can't use their winter to play basketball. Although I would say that the best way you can get in shape for your spring sport is by playing a winter sport. And I wish all my girls that played basketball played a fall sport. Most do, not all, but most do, just because I'd rather them be in shape from that sport. So I think that's been the biggest change. As far as the wellness, that's become more and more a focus, but I think that's true in all of academia. It's not about, when I first started at Kent, we cared about our students. It's not that we didn't care about and their well-being, but now there is this intense, we have to give 15 minutes in between classes, or they need a longer lunch, or they need, a 30-minute break in the middle of the morning, or whatever it is. And we can argue the value of that, but that certainly wasn't a discussion that was happening 19 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think, and I think that's good. I think the kids need it. I see it in my own kids. It's more of a mental game. And I think as more and more studies are done, you realize the importance of those types of things that maybe 19 years ago we didn't really know, or maybe we knew, but it was just the beginning of it. It certainly changed how I coach, in that you have to be wary that well, first of all, the sport you're coaching isn't the only thing in their lives, and they're feeling lots of stress. They're very competitive to get into college, and they're thinking about that from the minute they step in the high school building to the minute they leave. And so those things, you have to be flexible in your practice plans. You have to try to spend some time each week. Even in the last 3 or 4 years, I've certainly tried to build in time each week for team building activities or less less game planning and more psychological stuff. Certainly my pregame speeches and day before speeches include more of visualizing themselves having a good game rather than, just wanting it. I tell them to go to bed each night and dream about the scoreboard and what does the score say on there. Hopefully they see a winning score. So I think there's all those pieces that play a part that change everything. And it's hard because we're losing practice time on a daily basis. And so you're trying to get them better physically and the fundamentals they need and game plan and all this. And at the same time, try to help them mentally and succeed and support them in their academics.
So do you kind of just adding a question right now, but like
Sure.
dealing with that kind of the specialization, because that's a topic that really interests me right now.
Yep.
Do you believe that there's something to be done to help, I don't know, with that issue? Because when we have this focus of the wellness piece now coming into the students' lives more and more, just when you hear some of these kids who are playing soccer or whatever sport it may be, that's their only life they have going at times. And I mean, we've had, even at my short time at Kent, we've had athletes who really want to play for the school whose clubs don't want that. So I guess there's some fundamental changes, but I didn't know if that would have to be made. But
yeah, I think it's tough as a high school. You're kind of trapped, right? And especially an independent school like Kent Denver, in which the families are paying to be there, and so it's hard for you to step in. I think where the fundamental change would come to allow kids to do more high school sport is if in those sports where clubs are so prevalent that they're getting recruited college-wise by their high school team. And unfortunately, that's not happening in a lot of the sports, which makes me sad. Football will, that's not a big club situation, right? So football is still being recruited based on film from your high school games, and that's where you're playing against the best talent, right? We hear constantly with soccer, though, that if I want to play, I need to play club because then I'm playing against the best competition. Well, okay, I get that, but can't you do both, right? It would seem to me that the club teams could take the season off that the high school teams are playing. Even if nationwide we had to come to an agreement of when we play our sports, right? I understand that some states, play boys and girls soccer in the same season, and it might be in the spring as opposed to the fall. Well, if we as a nation and the National Federation of High Schools ever came out and said, okay, these are the seasons you're playing, then I think you can go to the club system and say, okay, these are the seasons we're playing. Could you take those seasons off to allow us to have a high school season and allow those students to play for their high schools? I think that's the only way, convincing, sitting there and say, you're not really going to get a scholarship is not going to be, it's a fight you just can't win.
I mean, I think and it's cool because you'll see different kids grow a passion for some sport, and that might even change what they want to play one day.
Absolutely.
But it really only seems to be the sports, at least in Colorado, that have some chance, a higher percentage of kids that are going to go on to a college level end up playing more for high school. But then you have a sport like hockey that doesn't have a lot of kids end up going on to the next level. So it's tough, and I know there's not one set answer there.
It's a tough situation, that's for sure. And I think it's going to be a problem for the next 20, 30 years, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So what, kind of going off one of those last questions, what do you think student athletes in today's world need the most from a coach or an athletic staff?
Patience. Patience. I think all coaches are competitive. We all want to win. I think what I've learned in my kind of 20 plus years of coaching is that you just got to be patient. They're doing the best they can. You're going to get the players you're going to get. Some are going to be studs at your sport, and some are going to be what I call seasonal players, right? They pick up a basketball between November and March, and that's all they pick up, the basketball. And you have to be patient with that and understand that, because you need them just as much as you need the studs. Certainly there are schools out there that, they have 10 players that are going to go on and play college, right? So it's a lot easier. But at a school like ours, I think in most of the schools in Colorado, you just have to be patient. You have to learn how to accept those that are not going to be as good, and remember that the role players are just as important as the studs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they need patience, and as I said earlier, support. It's frustrating when they say, "Hey, coach, I'm not going to be there because I have this, this, and this." That's frustrating. But at a school like ours, we can't. You just have to say, "Okay, next time, hopefully you'll pick us," type of situation. But those I think are the two big things.
So final few questions here. What, like in your role with athletics, obviously facilities is such a big part of it. What's kind of the day-to-day, what do people need to know there as like looking to get into the industry?
I think you have to know, I kind of learned by fire. You just got to know what kind of love and care each facility needs,
Mm-hmm.
right? When a field needs to, when a turf needs to be replaced, when I can't line a field. I have no idea how to line fields,
Mm-hmm.
but it's probably something I think everybody should learn at some point. I think you gotta know what you're working with, and then you got to prioritize if you have that opportunity to build new. So, when I walked in at Kent Denver, we only had 2 gyms. If I were the athletic director at that, it would have, and no turf field. And the first priority was to get a stadium and a turf field. And I think, that was already in motion when I got there, but looking back on it, that was number one need. And then the next need was a new gym. We just need 3 gyms. And now you're looking at pipe dreams and what we talked about earlier. So you got to know what the facilities kind of care facilities needs, and then kind of upgrades you need.
Okay. And then arguably one of the biggest parts of being an athletic director position really has got to be, I imagine, is that guiding of coaches, coach development. So what do you really believe in there? How do you develop a successful coach? Maybe they're a little bit younger. I don't know. What are you looking for at Kent?
I think when you're talking about young coaches and developing young or new coaches, they could be older and just getting into the coaching.
100%.
I think evaluating, and not necessarily formal evaluation, but I think an athletic director who leaves every day when there's no game early, it doesn't do their job right. You need to be able to go down and watch a practice for a while. And you need to look at your coach and say, hey, I thought you did a good job with this, but is there another way for us to look at it? Or I was standing out there and watching, and I noticed, you had, 7 kids sitting on the side, twiddling their thumbs, and you're really focusing on the 7 kids that were in front of you. Is there a way you can get those other 7 kids a little bit more involved? So I think evaluating on the spot is the best way to develop a coach. I also do believe you learn a lot. I learn a lot as a coach by going to other people's practices. As you said earlier, we have a lot of good coaches at our school. And I honestly believe that I have gotten to become a better coach because I'll go watch their practice and how they interact with the students, and some of the things they say. Not necessarily drills, not every, you can't, while there's some things that you translate across the sport, great. It's, what do I do with what do they do with their assistant coaches? What do they do with those 7 players that are sitting on the side? Are they on the side? Are they behind the play? Are you trying to mix it up and even, get them in a little bit more? So I think constant evaluation in an informal way is the best way to help a coach, and to be a little bit proactive so that they don't get themselves stuck in a bad situation.
Okay. And then final question, do you have any resources, books, however you want to phrase it, that you would suggest to someone that wants to get into coaching, or
Sure. So
anything
I'll give
that's
you
really helped them where you are?
Yeah, sure. So I really think any book written by John Wooden, it is really good to go by, especially when and that's a book across that. Some of them are basketball specific, some of them are not, but there's even one, and I can pull it up here in a second if you want me to. But there's even one that's just some of his quotes, just like page after page of his quotes, that really just kind of gives you some inspiration and some knowledge. So I would think that would be, the coaching side, but also along the coaching side, clinics are big. And I think what you'll see now going forward is more clinics via Zoom or a webinar situation. And I think those are huge because there are better coaches than me. I am who I am. I'm a 3A girls basketball coach in Colorado. I get it. But I've, watching film, watching coaches present really helps me, get drills, plan different ideas of drills that I'm already doing, practice plans, those types of things have really been helpful. And then from the administrator side, I'll throw this same type of situation. During the shutdown, a lot of the administrators, a lot of online presentations given across the nation, and just learning from those athletic directors, you get an idea of what they're going on. Our state's not like, New York or Pennsylvania or Georgia or whatever, but our problems are. And there's a lot of similarities in that. And so I think those types of things are really going to be beneficial over the next 10, 15 years, in that you certainly can, do clinics via Zoom, via webinar. And I think, if you can, NIAAA for administrators, the Nike basketball camps for coaches, and then like I said, any book by John Wooden, about John Wooden, is always good.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me and taking the time.
You got it. My pleasure.
All right, Oyvind, thank you for joining me.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here, Connor.
So the first question I wanted to ask is, how did you get your start into fitness?
Crazy coming all the way from Norway, actually, over to California. And at the time, it was mid 90s, and I actually lived in Norway still, and made a visit to the United States for about 6 months and lived here, and really got into the personal training and fitness, got my certifications, and then I actually went back to Norway afterwards and spent another year and a half there before I made my final move over here to the United States. So it was really when personal training, strength conditioning really came on strong in mid 90s, late 90s. and moved over here to go to school, and basically just love the field so much. And now 25, 6 years later, still going strong.
So for people that don't know, Oyvind, you own a very successful gym in Englewood, Colorado, Denver, and very smaller gym, lot of clients, a lot of one-on-one workouts. So, what do you really credit being able to get where you are today from where you started?
Well, I lost you there for a second. Sorry. Yeah. No, it's a, like you said, Connor. It's a phenomenal gym that we have down in the tech center here, and great clientele with great staff, and we've been together a long time now. And I think the number one thing really to break out on your own, to start your own facility, coming from a bigger club like I did, it's a lot of, it's hard work, number one. I mean, it's 4 a.m. to 5, 6 at night, and we got, that's the way it has to go in the beginning. Great relationships, building with clients, really working. I believe that extra step, that extra, service that we do with our clients at our facility, building that personal relationship and really trying to get to the bottom of what people's goals are and try to help them achieve that, and making it a more of a journey, too. And I know that's kind of a cliche, but it really is the truth. And we're not huge on, doing 10 session packages, whatever. Like, we really want to try and be a bigger part. Of course, we will offer that and help people if that's what they want. But we want to try to introduce health and fitness more from a standpoint of something that you can take with you for your whole life, and really learn it from the beginning. And then, we set goals as we go along. And but I think that number one thing, and then having the gym, a private gym like this, is the community is everything. And, people really know each other. Everybody comes in, leave their egos at the door, and comes to work, in Muscle Beach, like I call it.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been going there for 10 plus years now, it feels like. And I would say that's one of the coolest parts about Viking Power Fitness, is that it's such a community feel. That, like, there's people I've met for the first time, and we'll say hello to them. I mean, you guys have professional athletes, former professional athletes. You have 85-year-old people coming to just get a workout. It's a cool setting.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear that. That means we're doing it the way we want to do it. So I appreciate that.
From the business side, what's really the biggest daily challenges that you face?
Well, certainly, from I mean, right now we're in a tough time, obviously, but so besides the time we're in right now, where health clubs and stuff are certainly struggling because of people's fear to go into big facilities and stuff like that. But the other, I really think the key for us is building the team, having the team that we need. And when we put all the right pieces into to place, it's just kind of, it goes in the right direction for us. But the toughest challenges is also, we're very focused on weight training and, cardiovascular flexibility. We have Pilates, we have spinning, we have all that. But also, finding that people need to realize that they have to have weight training in their routines. And that's overcoming there's a lot of, misconceptions about weight training, and about, it's going to make you big and bulky and all those kind of things. And, we want people to, when they get over that first hump of, a few months into, and they're really starting to feel stronger. There's nothing more empowering when you see somebody really changing their, body, attitude, those things, but also getting stronger. Nothing's better than feeling stronger. So, that's something that we competing with all these, big group places that are running around with big treadmills and circuit training and stuff like that, which we find that, there's definitely a place for that too. But we are certainly a little bit more on the old school approach. But now people are realizing that how resistance training and weight training is just so important. So from a business standpoint, certainly trying to, we want to make sure people feel that they're getting value for coming. And, when we have achieved that, and I think that's part of our success for sure.
Well, one of the biggest overhead costs probably outside of the renting of the facilities is that gear. So how are you making sure you're going to get a piece of equipment that's getting high use and you don't spend so much money on it, it's never used? Like, how are you making those decisions?
Yeah, I know that, we do that as a team now. I was on my own for a long time. I have partners now, so we try to do that as a team, and we really try to, stay on top of what's out there, as much as we can. We are, like I said, old school. We like squat racks, we like bench press, we like dumbbells, we like sleds, lat pulls, that kind of stuff. But we want to certainly, make sure. But we try to find equipment that we are a smaller facility, so we don't have a lot of what's called selectorized pieces, like a leg extension where you can only do a leg extension on. We will certainly have one, as we have a leg curl, we have all that. But we try to find machines, like cables. With this dual cables, we can have two people working at one time. We try to have a lot of open space so you can add what, we call functional training these days, which, as been with us a long time. Functional training is squats, sleds, all that stuff, as well as planks, all that. But so that it's important to have very, very good equipment, no doubt about it, and maintenance on the equipment and stay on top of all of that. But it's going to be the team and how we use it, how we train people, how efficient it is. That's the most important on top of it. Of course, the great equipment. But yeah.
And I think you guys have done a really good job of adding different pieces that you think are different classes. There's biking now. You have the whole Pilates rocking. It's one thing after another. And it seems to bring more people in and keep them there doing some different classes, that lifestyle that you're talking about. So final question on the business side of it. When you're looking for new trainers, different people around the gym, what are you really looking for? If someone's wanting to go work at Viking Power, what do they need to be able to do as a trainer?
I lost you there for a second, Connor. As the trainer, what are we looking for from the trainers?
Yeah. As if I'm a trainer and I want to get hired by Viking Power, assuming you have the need for it, what are you really looking for from me as someone coming in?
Well, yes, I got you. Absolutely. Yeah. Number one is, we would certainly, look at certifications and degrees and those kind of things. And, we got to carry your own insurance, being a private facility, those things. Besides the practical things like that, I think we really try to find trainers that can fit into the team, fit with our clients. We have a very, like a broad, big variety of clients, like you said, from 11 to 85 pros, semi-pros, moms that are in crazy shape, corporate. So we really got to find trainers that are, number one, willing to work, willing to build a clientele, because that is something that, as we don't have a membership with 1,000 people to pull from, we are referral based, and we spend very little money on marketing. We have basically none. We have an amazing referral system, so when people come, they stay. Our retention is incredible. We have 15, 20-year clients that have been coming for 3 times a week for 20 years, which is like unheard of. So we want to really try somewhere that can fit into the team. That's not, number one thing. It is a service, personal service business in the end of the day. Yes, we got to have our background. We got to know what we're doing, and we got to be able to create and design programs for everybody and all that. But we got to be able to create a relationship with our clients. So we're very picky on who we bring on board. I certainly we'd love to give everybody a chance, but they got to be playing team, because, as a lot of our clients would train with different trainers. It's unbelievable. It's some of the coolest things I'm most proud of as an owner is I can go to Norway on vacation for 2 weeks, and you guys are still coming in training with another client or another trainer, and it's not like we're stealing from each other, right? So we personality, motivation, energy. That's what we want. We want that energetic person that can also have that. We want everybody to know everybody's name. It's kind of like Cheers. Like when Norm's in the corner having a beer on a Friday at 5 o'clock. It's like we know everybody. I want all my trainers to know every single person that goes through the door and know their names. And we're not quite there, but those things I think is very important in looking for a trainer for us.
Yeah. So if you are creating a fitness plan for clients, what do you think is the most important part of that? What are you really trying to dissect and build that plan by?
Yeah, no, we do a consultation first, of course, with the client. We'll sit down and talk about their goals, their background, their experience, certainly those things. And, but it's interesting when you're talking about that kind of, because people with their goals and, it's part of the journey to find out what their goals are too. Everybody's going to have like, well, I want to lose some weight. I want to get a little stronger, the basic stuff, right? But if we can, as a trainer, trying to find out like, what motivates them, where they're going, how are we going to, how come you didn't stick with your program last time? How come you fell off the wagon there? What kind of changes can we make to make you actually enjoy this? Of course, it's going to be hard work and it's not always going to be fun. Lunges are not always fun, squats, but we have to find, if we can really get to the bottom of what they're trying to achieve, I think we're going to help a lot. So it really depends. To answer your question, it really depends on what they're looking for, but we always try to include resistance training, weight training, and no matter what kind of goals you have, that is just the key. Combined with cardiovascular training, obviously. Nutrition, it's huge. Abs are made in the kitchen. Not everybody want to hear that, right? And so we try to design that program where we find the right balance of all those things for them, So, of course, when you have an athlete, it's going to be a totally different, program. I mean, they're more, going to be more performance-based maybe, but we also like to look at everybody as athletes because we all want to train like athletes to a certain extent. We all want to be athletes, and we are, most of us, right? We might not be the John Lynches of the world, but, we'd love to. We'd love to do some of the stuff that he does, right? So if we can kind of get that fire going, I think that's a big part of it.
I mean, your guys, maybe arguably you're one of the best athletes to ever be in there. Buzz is 63 years old. He tries to beat the pro athletes in the fan bike competitions, whatever the competition is that day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's a beast. He's 67 actually, and I would take him almost. And he actually scares those guys away a little bit in the beginning because they're like, "Hey, I don't want to go against that weekend warrior and let him beat me up," But then, but that's the kind of energy we want, right? We want people to be competitive, and how we do those challenges sometimes. The sled challenges and stuff. People love that. So it's definitely not just for the pro, but let's train a little bit like those guys at least.
Yeah. So when if you have a beginner athlete coming in, they have no background on anything, they don't necessarily have a goal, what are you suggesting? What are you trying to really build them into?
Well, certainly, depending on what sport they're in, there's some basic things that, every sport's going to see, and I think depending on their age, but young athletes, 14, 15, 16 starting to come in, they have to get comfortable starting doing lifts, real lifts, power cleans, deadlifts, squats. And that's an age when you can actually start doing that light, as you've seen, we have training bars, which are lighter, they're like 20-pound bars. We start working on those basic lifts to really get them to understand, because that's what they're going to be seeing going into high school and definitely going into college. So if we can build a nice base for them there, so they really feel comfortable, number one, and really master all those lifts, because no matter what sport they're going to be in, they're going to see those lifts no matter what. And they're always going to be there, right? So, then of course we want to work on their core strength and stuff like that and get them comfortable in the gym. Again, the agility, flexibility, it all goes hand in hand there. But if we can get an athlete, like the younger we can get them, meaning 13, 14, we can start, the better it is, right? So they don't learn these things. We have proper form from the beginning and really make them comfortable in the squat rack and all that. They're going to have huge benefits moving forward. And of course, we work on speed. Speed kills, right? And, so we want to, it goes hand in hand there for sure.
So if you were to say you have a philosophy when it comes to strength training, what would that be? What's your thought as a strength and performance coach? If you have one.
I'm sorry, I lost you there, Connor. What would I tell them?
Oh, no. What's your philosophy as a strength training coach? I don't know if you necessarily have one there. I can cut that part out. No, for sure. And we believe that as a team, we really work together. So it's my personal, with my team and my co-owners of the gym too. But the strength, it's really, we have to basically get back to basics a little bit. We still have to lift weights.
That's what we really believe in. Now, of course, we are very much trying to stay on top of everything new that's coming out, technology, stuff like that. But we have to, a lot of sports conditioning places have kind of gone away from, lifting. I mean, when I'm talking squats and deadlifts and all that stuff, and it's become very performance based on the turf, which is amazing. We want to do all that stuff too, but we still have to include those old lifts. So for our philosophy is old school, versus meeting new school. We adapt to things, right? Because speed is super, super important and all that. But we just heard about read this article of Michael Jordan's old trainer, Tim, and he Grower, and he was talking about how some of the NBA teams don't even have a weightlifting facility anymore. And he was talking about how that is like, and I believe the same way he does is, we got to lift weights too. And we got to do it properly. We got to learn how to do it. And, but it has to be part of that. So maybe that's why we're seeing so many injuries, they're not as, those things, but so we're definitely that philosophy there. So I would say old school versus meeting new school with, we got to stay on top of what's going on out there. We, as you know, we try to adapt things all the time, as much as we do a lot of research, and we love to study other performance coaches around the country. One of my guys, Carson, he loves that, right? He's into it. He wants to know everything going on out there from everybody, which I think if we can put all that together, we can make our athletes better.
So I don't know if you have a set thing with this. This might just be related with the athlete, but do you have a certain schedule you follow in a week, ideally for trying to hit different body parts? So like lower body, or is it just built upon the athlete?
No, I mean, it certainly depends on the athlete and, what their goals are and how many times a week we're going to see them, those kind of things. But we would, like I said, we're working more on the specific lifting. It's not necessarily an upper, lower body day, but, we're also going to look at, if what we're trying to do, are we trying to put on muscle? Well, maybe we should break it up a little bit in an upper, lower day. The lifting, we want to make sure also that they're not overtraining at it, especially if it's a younger athlete, that we got to pay attention to growth, how their body's feeling. Those things are very, very important. So repetitions are important. We're probably going to stay a little bit higher in the beginning to build that foundation. So, around 10 repetition mark, and then we might take them down to 6 to 8 reps on certain lifts as they're progressive and that progression and they get stronger.
Okay, awesome. And then my final question, if you have an answer to this, as a strength and performance coach, gym owner, all of the above, do you have any pieces of material, movies, podcasts, books that you could recommend for someone to look into if you're trying to go into the profession?
You know what, it's definitely as far as the profession go, there's a lot of great strength coaches that we can look up. Mark Verstegen is one of the best in the country. He's down at Exos down in Arizona. He's phenomenal. He trains a lot of athletes. We got a great one here in town, Lauren Landau. He's with the Broncos. There's a lot of guys to try to look up to and see what they've done through the years. We have a lot of stuff here in Denver, which is phenomenal. I feel like we got a couple of jewels at our gym that are just phenomenal strength coaches. And as you know, you get a lot more on the one-on-one training with us. My personal philosophy on lifting and stuff, obviously is influenced by Arnold. There's no other way around it. Schwarzenegger, he was the man. It's not necessarily sports specific training, but when you come back to it, a lot of the training they're doing, it's just still the best out there. So there's a lot of you can study and see specific guys. And I believe in full, being the complete athlete. You got to be strong, flexible. You got to have endurance. So we try to put that together in a nice package.
Awesome. Well, Oyvind, I want to thank you for joining me. Really appreciate you taking the time.